Hey, welcome back to the shop. Don't know if I've introduced this project yet or not. This is me thinking out loud. So in case I haven't, I am building an awning, and my goal is to get it built rather quickly now that I have started. And it's a metal awning. So 56 wide, 42 tall, 2 feet deep. This is to scale. This will be going on a guy's house over the front door. Cool little storybook style awning. Really cute house. Well, I don't know if I'll put a picture of it here because that's his business, what his house looks like. Really cool though, and later if he agrees, we'll put it on camera. I went to Black Dog to roll some material. So this is some 1-inch square tubing that I used the Edwards radius roller over at Black Dog to roll to a given radius, which is now how I will construct these metal frames. So I've drawn a triangle on the table to scale that I now need to cut and fit and profile those pieces into here with a bottom piece. Make 2 triangles, join them together with 22-inch pieces, making a 24 front to back awning, and then take this sheet of 18 gauge steel and make a covering, hammering it to profile it, something like this. So just spending some time with a ball peen hammer to get some texture in there. Be a pretty fun project. Hopefully it'll be fairly quick. Just gonna do a lot of cutting and fitting right now, so I figured I'd set up the camera and bring you with me. Let's go. Welcome to Lift Arc Builds. So when building something that has very few straight lines, it ends up being a fairly tedious process, a lot of back and forth between the saw and the table, a lot of checking and fitting, as you can see. And even then when you cut and fit for what you think might be the last time, there's going to be a little bit of grinding and sanding. And, you can either do a bunch of careful math up front and get it almost perfect, or you can eyeball it. And if you've been doing this as long as I have, your eyeball is actually pretty good. So here I'm using a Portaband battery-powered bandsaw that has a deeper throat than the cutoff wheel does. I like using the little 4.5-inch cutoff wheels, but as they wear down, the cut depth gets less and less. So, along with this vertical bandsaw, it made this job a lot easier. All 3 of these tools here in this shot are from the 40s. Those are some of the original machines that were in this shop. So here everything is fit within reason, and I'm going around and tacking evenly with the MIG welder and then grinding everything smooth because I need to flip it and have it lay flat on the table as I tack the other side. And you tack all the way around the joint before you weld fully, that way everything's held square and flat. I put the anvil on here because I'm not on my fixture table, of course, so it was the only way I could hold that down. And here, because it's thin metal, you'll see me use that technique where I do a lot of tack, a lot of separate tacks. And that's just to keep the heat out of the metal versus running a solid bead. Grinding everything smooth. Here I'm using a 1/4-inch 90-degree die grinder with an abrasive pad on it. A little more maneuverable than the grinder with the flap wheel on it. And now that I've made one, it's time to make one that, is the same. So in many ways, I use the now completed one as a pattern for the pieces I need to cut. Quick few trips to the 1940s vertical bandsaw. That blade's quite dull, but it's okay. touch things up, and you can see me now using the one I made as a pattern. And now that I've cut one, I can lay that over the other one and use it as a direct top to bottom pattern. You can see it's dark. Wintertime here in Roanoke, which means it gets dark at 4:30, which is really lame. As you're watching this, though, we're coming out of it, so days are getting a little longer. Hello, back at the awning, day 2, new glasses, new attitude, same attitude. We're gonna finish up the second frame, connect them together. Before I do that though, I may take one of the frames to the client's house to figure out how to install, mock it up on their house, and figure out how we're gonna anchor this thing into the brick. So he's got some protruding bricks, it's a real textured house, so there might have to be some stonework kind of to mount it properly. But we'll cross that bridge soon. Let's make this other frame, or finish making this other frame. So now it's just more of the same. The second one of anything you make is typically faster because you already have it figured out. You've already made your mistakes, hopefully, on the first one, so you can refine on the second one. And here I took the tinted part out of my welding shield so that I could have a more effective face covering. Because for this kind of cut, it helps to look directly down on the cutoff wheel to get the cut straight. And, you know, I don't trust my glasses that much. Yep, same story, multiple tacks, keep the heat out, grind it smooth. This is pretty thin gauge steel. It's all 16 gauge, 1-inch tubing, so everything is very light, and the lighter the steel is, the less of its own weight it has to support. So, you know, grinding welds down fundamentally makes them weaker, but in this case, there's going to be a lot more structure added, so not worried about it. This is more of a cosmetic fabrication piece than a structural fabrication piece. So now I got to get on the inside there, grind it smooth with the die grinder, patch a few remaining holes with the welder. I use little pieces of aluminum inside my vise so that it's aluminum on steel instead of steel on steel, so I don't damage what I'm clamping. Aluminum is softer than steel, so homemade soft jaws. Welding that inside corner is a little tight, but you come back. This is all very visible now, so come back and grind it smooth. Another day, another opportunity to use this awesome fixture table. So I've got 2 squares that I've made, kind of cobbled together from some things. These I bought from Maker Table, and these I made here with DXF files I bought from Maker Table. If we get carried away, I'll put all the links down in the description for those. But I bolted these to give me a taller square. I know there's a bigger square I can buy, but this seems to work great. So what this does is now these are perfectly square to the table because of the way they're built. And now I used a piece of angle, as you saw in the time lapse, to make sure they're on the same plane with each other. So anything I clamp to this surface now is vertical and level and plumb in 3D space. So now that is level and vertical, I'll cut my spacers, my 22-inch spacers, so it's 24 from one side to the other. So being that this is 1 inch and the other one's 1 inch, that means my connecting pieces will be 22 inches. And I'll put the spacers in, I'll set the other one up against it in between the spacers, and tack things together. So this thing will start to take shape pretty fast. Work smarter, not harder. Let's do this thing. I love this table. It has been so nice to work with. I think I already said that, but that's okay. awkward transition. So now we're not dealing with curves as much. We are cutting straight pieces and doing straight joinery. Most of what you're about to see me do, I'm making up on the fly because I know the top is going to be covered with sheet metal. And so whatever I build to connect these two frames just needs to be symmetrical and look halfway decent from underneath. So here's where we're at by the end of the day. Not a full day, of course, but 2 frames made. These are ready to weld together, but I'm not going to yet. I just wanted to get my jigging right. I'm gonna take one of these faces off. We're gonna take it to the client's house, put it on the wall above his door, figure out what we gotta do to his brick, and that'll also inform me of mounting tabs for the back part for Tapcons, concrete anchors, however we're gonna anchor this thing to the wall. It's gonna be nice and light, so I'm not too worried about weight and pulling off the house. So, should be good. I'm meeting with him soon, so get that information and get this out the door. Kind of cool. I think his house is really cool looking, and this is gonna be a perfect accent for it. So, see y'all tomorrow. Okay, day 3 on the awning. This morning I went by the client's house with one side of the frame. We put it up against the brick on his house, and he's got this brick that's got a lot of texture, so we marked where it's gonna go. I took my grinder with my diamond wheel and carved out slots through the bricks that were in the way so that this thing can sit as flush as possible to his house. We'll still have to caulk and seal around it, but I think it's gonna work. So now that I have the frame back, and I know I've marked on the frame like where mounting tabs can go and all that kind of stuff, we can weld this thing together, because it was a lot easier to lift one side of the frame up and mount it to the, and offer it up to the house versus the entire awning frame. So you knew all that. That was a bunch of redundant information. Let's get to fixturing and welding and finish this thing. Then we'll move on to the sheet metal. So the table is level, the squares are square, but the bubble in that level is your Bible when it comes to doing stuff like this. So tack, you know, a good technique to use is even after you tack, which is just weld a little bit, you can still bend and move things. Metal will bend, so you can use a small pit of weld to hold things in place and then still be able to bend your structure around to get it right. So now I'm cutting and welding on some pieces of flat bar that will help me secure the sheet metal down the road. Okay, these are 22 inches long, just like the other connectors. And these are gonna go in between the frames like this and give me a mounting surface for the sheet metal that's gonna go on this. Probably add more. I'm gonna start with 6, so 1 at the top, 1 at the bottom, and 1 in the middle on each face. Okay. So here again, I'm grinding my welds flat, partially because they're going to be in the way. I want to make sure everything lays flat underneath that sheet metal so that it can lay flat on the frame. And then here's the last piece of sheet metal, last piece of flat bar, I mean. Stitch weld, there's no need to weld all the way across that. That's just a waste of weld. Grind this flat again, and I think you guys are starting to get the picture. Do this at the bottom, the top, middle.
So now we flip it and weld the stuff that you couldn't get to before. There is the rough fabrication. These strips here will allow me to have multiple points to weld on the sheet that will go here, that sheet of 18 gauge over there. On both sides, it'll go up his side and go down that side. It'll probably have a ridge cap. And then, so all that came out well, ground down all my welds. This whole frame is very light because everything is, the tubing is 14 gauge. The straps are 1/8 inch. But I think it looks good. It's got good looks. It's got good proportions. It's got a cool shape. It's going to fit well with the client's house because it's a very storybook style house. Really cool steep pitch roof and stuff. So on this back piece here, you can see where I marked each one of those lines is where a course of bricks is on the client's house. So I know where my anchors can hit. The frame's done and looking good. Feeling good. I'll see you next when something happens. Okay, so I've cut 2 pieces of sheet metal that will go up and down both sides of the awning. And now what we're trying to create, I've already started a little bit, is a texture of sorts. This is what I did that I sent to the client. He really liked it. This is what I chose to do after I realized that the place that sold the textured metal that I was interested in, it was like Online Metals Direct or something, I built the estimate off of that price and that availability, and turns out they've been out of business for years. So textured metal within the budget does not exist, and so I will be taking this ball peen hammer, texturizing it myself. Could be worse. Just gonna have a few tired arms, but we're just gonna inch away at it, make a bunch of noise, and see how it goes. Got the metal on some blankets because you need it to be on a surface that will give some, so that the indent you make with the hammer actually goes down. So here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most satisfying clip you've seen on our channel thus far. Wow, look at me go. It almost sounds like rain on a metal roof. It was really hard to do this randomly because it's so easy, like mowing a lawn, to go up and back and up and back and up and back. And as someone who fancies himself an engineer type of guy, random and no straight lines is really hard for me. You can see on the left where I started with straight lines, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do that. So what you can't see in these shots is I would periodically run it to that roller there on the left, that little blue machine, and I'd stick it to, oh, there you go. There you go, viewers. I'm watching this with you. But that would help get the left to right curve out of it and flatten it out. That way it's easy to lay flat. Woo! 2022! We're back at it! We're back at it!
Back at it.
Wyatt had a baby.
I had a kid. I had a little bitty, it's like a version of me with no beard and like that big.
For now.
For now. She'll grow.
Next time on Lift Arc Builds, we will do all the TIG welding necessary to attach the sheet metal to the frame. Lots of grinding, lots of shaping, lots of welding, because we want it to look seamless. And then we'll go to the paint shop, we'll paint it, and then we'll deliver and install it to the customer. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Oh yes, very nice. Cool.